that or a more deliberate, intentional act. And I think that's why we need to get to the bottom and get that black box in the Indian Ocean.
Alan, there's also a good deal of speculation about what's called the Payne-Stewart scenario, because that's how the famous golfer ended up dying, that however this event started, that in the end, all of the people on the plane, including the pilots or the hijackers, were incapacitated, and the plane just kept flying on autopilot until it ran out of gas and crashed into the ocean. How likely do you think that is?
Well, that's certainly a possibility. I have to agree with Congressman McCall. Everything is still on the table. There's even a better example of that, and that was with a Helios Greek 737. They had a slow decompression. The pilots passed out along with the passengers, and a flight attendant, they have these walk-around oxygen bottles and mask, ended up going to the cockpit. He flew the aircraft at the end until it ran out of gas 2.5 hours later. Well, we know the 777 has a lot more fuel than the 737, and that scenario is certainly in play, but there's a better one that I call Cairogate, and that was a 777, an Egypt Air 777 sitting at the gate in Cairo, and they had in that case, a rapid fire that within a matter of minutes burned a hole in the fuselage. So sitting on the ground, that's a problem. They got everybody off. The captain fought the fire, the first officer got everybody off the plane. I'm not saying that's the exact scenario, but Chris, it burned a hole in the fuselage, and if that would have happened at 35,000 feet, we'd have had a multiple emergency, and I'm not sure any crew member or crew members could have handled that. And people talk about the gyrations, the vertical gyrations, mean that's not an autopilot maneuver. There may well have been a flight attendant at the controls. Now, this is all speculation. I'm not saying that's what happened, but it does fit some of the data. So you need to take a look at what happened at Cairogate there.
One last question for you, Congressman McCall. It now turns out, after a lot of confusion, apparently there were lithium batteries in the cargo, the possibility that they could have caught on fire.
Oh, yeah, lithium batteries are a hazardous cargo. In the United States, they would never be on board as passengers. I think that's very important to note. In this case, they were. We had the flight out of Abu Dhabi, the UPS flight, that went down, actually went out and returned, and 30 minutes later crashed as well. So we have examined that possible theory in this case, because they did turn right back around to Malaysia. And so we thought about that, but then he says, okay, good night, and the transponders turned off 2 minutes later, and it makes you wonder, there's no distress on the plane at the time. It makes you wonder if there was any sort of crisis, and the fact that it flew 7 more hours after a potential electrical fire is on the plane that could have turned off the transponder. Is that really a viable theory? But I do think it is a theory out there that needs to be examined, along with an intentional, deliberate act to bring down the plane.
Well, what I come away from today is that the mystery continues. Congressman McCall, Alan, thank you both. Thanks for joining us today. Obviously, we'll stay on top of this story, gentlemen.
Thank you. Thanks, Chris.
Up next, Russian troops mass on Ukraine's border as the U.S. imposes new sanctions and the Kremlin retaliates. What happens now? Our Sunday group weighs in. Plus, what would you like to ask the panel about the situation in Ukraine? Just go to Facebook or Twitter @Fox News Sunday, and we may use your question on the air.